खाना खाया ना, मैं देख रही थी वो लोग खड़े थे खाना लेकर शर्मा करके बोल देना, फोटो कर लेगा। पता नहीं कहाँ होते हैं। एक इंटरप्रेटर कौन बैठेगा मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा, तो बैठे नहीं। वो मैंने स्टार्ट कर दिया, सब रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट कर दी। मैं खाना खा रहा हूँ, देख रहा हूँ। इधर से आगे यार, वो भी खराब, फिर वापस आ गए। ठीक, माइक चेक। Namaskar and a very pleasant good afternoon to all the distinguished dignitaries, resource persons, esteemed guests, students and faculty members. On behalf of the Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center and Linguistic Empowerment Cell, GenU, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you for this international symposium on interpreter education and research, perspectives from United States, Canada, and India. It is indeed an honor to have all of you here today for this enriching and collaborative event. Now I request all the dignitaries to come on the dais, please. All the dignitaries and the resource person to please come on the dais. Thank you all the dignitaries. It is our rich and vibrant Indian tradition. Let's begin this event with the lighting of the lamp, symbolizing the light of knowledge and the commencement of this symposium formally. I now request our esteemed dignitaries to kindly proceed with the lighting of the lamp. Volunteers, please.
सुखं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः
So thank you so much, all the dignitaries, for lighting the lamp and commencing this symposium in a formal way. So thanks once again. Now I request Sri Islamul Haq to welcome Dr. Brenda Nicodemus, Professor, Gallaudet University, USA, with the sapling. Dr. Brenda Nicodemus, Professor, Gallaudet University. I request Dr. Andesha Mangla to welcome Professor Marty Taylor, renowned expert sign language interpreter, Canada, with the sapling. I request Mr. Shubham Pochat to present the sapling to Professor Dipen Nath Das, Rector to Jawaharlal Nehru University. I request Mr. Viswajit to present the sapling to our Director Sir Kumar Raju Sir, Director ISLRTC. I request Anu Nair to welcome Professor Preeti Das ma'am, Chief Coordinator, LEC JNU. I request Neha Rajput to welcome Deputy Director Sri Sanjay Kumar Sir, ISLRTC. And I request Ms. Neha Tiwari to welcome Dr. Sandesha Raipa Madam, Assistant Professor, LEC. As a token of our love and gratitude, I request our Director Sir, Kumar Raju Sir, to welcome Dr. Brenda Nicodemus, Professor, Gallaudet University, USA, with the shawl. Thank you, sir. I request Sri Sanjay Kumar, Deputy Director, ISLRTC, to welcome Dr. Martin Taylor with the shawl. So thank you, sir. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Sandesha Raipa, Assistant Professor at JNU Linguistic Empowerment Cell, to deliver the welcome address and set the tone for today's event. Over to you, Dr. Raipa.
Disability is not the inability to live a full and meaningful life. It is society's inability to create an inclusive world. With these words from Robert M. Hensel, I welcome everyone and wish a good afternoon to all our esteemed guests, distinguished speakers, respected faculty members, students, and members of the deaf community. It is with immense pride and heartfelt gratitude that I, Dr. Sandesha Raipa, faculty and coordinator at Linguistic Empowerment Cell, welcome you all to this international symposium titled Interpreter Education and Research, Perspectives of the United States, Canada, and India, organized in collaboration with the Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, ISLRTC, under the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, Divyangjan, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Today's event is a shining example of our collective commitment to inclusivity, accessibility, and the advancement of knowledge in interpreter education and research. The program schedule for today reflects the richness of this symposium, bringing together leading voices in the field of sign language interpretation and inclusivity. Let me take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt thanks and welcome, and also to introduce you all to our esteemed guests, speakers, and participants who have made this event possible. Shri Kumar Raju, Director, ISLRTC, whose leadership has been instrumental in promoting Indian Sign Language and fostering inclusivity between JNU and ISLRTC. The Honorable Vice Chancellor of JNU, whose commitment to academic excellence and inclusivity strengthens our university's standing as a hub for meaningful dialogue. Though she could not be here because of an urgent meeting, she has sent her heartfelt greetings to all of you. Professor DEPendra Nath Das, Rector 2, for addressing about our institution's commitment to inclusivity and innovation in education. Shri Rajesh Agarwal, the Secretary of DEPwD, who unfortunately could not be here right now for a meeting, but whose vision drives the initiatives that makes events like this possible. Dr. Abhishek Kumar Srivastav, the Assistant Professor at ISLRTC, who has helped in setting the tone for this enlightening session. Professor Preeti Das, Chief Coordinator of the Linguistic Empowerment Cell JNU, who has been a champion of language accessibility at our university. We would also like to introduce you to our two speakers, Dr. Marty Taylor, renowned author and researcher from Canada, and Dr. Brenda Nicodemus, professor at Gallaudet University, USA, who will be providing us brief addresses on the symposium and addressing all of us later on. As Helen Keller once said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. This symposium is a testament to the power of collaboration in breaking barriers and fostering inclusivity. I extend a warm welcome to each of you and hope this symposium inspires meaningful conversations and partnerships to advance the global discourse on interpreter education and research. Thank you, and I wish you all a thoughtful and provoking, enriching afternoon ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raipa, for welcoming all the dignitaries and the participants. We now request Shri Kumar Raju, Director of Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, to introduce the symposium and share his vision for this important event. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon to all. I would like to welcome dignitary on dais, Professor DEPendra Nath Das, Rector JNU, Professor Preeti Das, Chief Coordinator Linguistic Department Cell, JNU, Dr. Brenda Nicodemus, Professor Gallaudet University, USA, Dr. Marty Taylor, expert and author, Sign Language Interpretation, Canada, Mr. Sanjay Kumar, Deputy Director, ISLRTC, Dr. Sandesha Raipa, Assistant Professor, LSE, JNU. I would also like to welcome all the students, faculty, who have joined here through online platform, all the students and faculty from NICE, CRCs. Other than all the students and faculty of ISLRTC, IPH New Delhi. As we know, ISLRTC is committed of promoting Indian Sign Language and empowering deaf community through education, research, and training. The field of interpreter education plays a crucial role in effective communication between the deaf hearing community and the hearing community. Actually, this facilitates access towards the education, health, services, and in the social participation. As we know, the person who is having deaf disability, they lack only in communication. If we remove the barrier of communication, then so-called hearing and non-hearing, the barrier it gets break. Suppose if we are not having a medium called air, in air sound travels. Suppose if we don't have air, All the so-called hearing impaired person also, they are not able to hear and he will be becoming deaf. Okay. So here, the sign language it plays a very vital role, and the sign language is the basic for the deaf community. We can even say sign language is the basic human right for the deaf community. And here the role of interpreter comes. In India, as we know, as of now, we are having very scarcity or lack of interpreters. We can say nearly 600 to 700 qualified interpreters are there. So to understand this need, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, and especially Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disability has recognized the need and has taken a very bold step to initiating DISLE and DTSL course across all the NIs and CRs. Now it is being run almost 20 NI and CRs. Not only this, to understand that as the DISLE is the basic skill-based course, quality teaching it must be. So not only launching DISLE and DTSL course at NI and CRC, government has encouraged to appoint a qualified instructor, master trainer, and interpreter. Going ahead of this, ministry has sanctioned or has encouraged to give a stipend to each and every student. I think this is one of the very few courses where government is giving a stipend to the students, and it is around 2,000 rupees per month per student. We are also going to launch this digital course on Moodle platform, so that each and every student who is studying in DISLE across NI and CRC, they should get the supplementary material. So this will have the basic PDF course content in PPT format. We will be having the live classes. Other than this, we can have all the interactive sessions which will supplement and it will make accessible this content for all the students across the nation. Other than this, government is also planning postgraduate diploma program in Indian Sign Language and diploma and postgraduate program in teaching sign language. So this we are going ahead with this and hope soon we are going to have a new program with this and going to have a new impact in the field of interpreter speech. We are also having remote video interpretation. So this will be a very much vital and key where in the public area where the deaf person goes and he or she can't find any means of communication. So this symposium help us to gain global practices. It will help us to explore innovation and the technology enhancement or advancement to all the above initiative where the government and especially ISLRTC is taking. And we will be also getting all this from the perspective of United Nations, Canada, and India. This symposium provides a very unique opportunity to hear from two highly respected experts in the field of sign language interpretation. The name is Dr. Brenda Nicholas from Gallaudet University, USA, and Dr. Mary Taylor from Canada. Their work in interpretation, education and research has contributed
टॉप का एक
immensely
नंबर होगा
to
इसमें
global
754
practice.
होगा लास्ट में
And we are fortunate to have
उसके
them
click कर
to share their insight with us today. This event
अटैचमेंट
is
में
also particularly significant in bringing
कर
Calicut University,
अटैचमेंट
JNU
attachment
and
document.
ISLRTC at one platform for the cause of every all. We are grateful to Linguistic Empowerment Cell, JNU, especially Professor Preeti Das and Dr. Sandesha Raikwa for their generous support and assistance. We are working closely for the faculty training, English teaching and the sign language training. We are also having a MOU with the Linguistic Department of JNU. So we hope such collaboration with JNU, Gallaudet University will go ahead and we will be having more such workshop, seminar, and we can have also academic collaboration, and which ultimately it will strengthen our initiative, our effort and implementation in the field of
नेशनल एंथम साइन लैंग्वेज
sign language.
इसमें वीडियो होगी नेशनल एंथम साइन लैंग्वेज
Once again, I take this opportunity to thank our guest lecturer, Dr. Nicodemus
हेलो
and Dr. Tyler for their time and valuable contribution to the symposium. I look forward for fruitful and engaging session. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for your introductory address and setting the tone for this international symposium. We are honored to have with us Professor Dipendranath Das, Rector of Jawaharlal Nehru University. I now request Professor Das to address us with his valuable words. Over to you, sir. All the dignitaries on the dais, particularly those who have come from different nations in the Symposium of Interpretations and Sign Language. Dr. Brenda Nicodemus from USA, Marty Taylor from Canada, and Kumar Raju and Sanjay Kumarji, and our colleagues Preeti Das and Sandesha, and all the dignitaries on the other side in the auditorium, particularly our faculty members, our guests, and all the students and members present in the audience. It's a very happy moment that when we think about the language empowerment cell, the conceptualizations of the language empowerment cell was such in our university is that we get students from different parts of the country. The beauty of our country is that it is very diverse. And diverse, I am not telling in which way. There are so many dimensions, particularly in the dimensions of language. It is also having a huge diversity. And JNU being one of the premier national university, which is also having a huge fame internationally, accommodate a lot of diversities in terms of communications in the process of teaching and learning. We know language is very important, which we need to complete the teaching learning process. And whenever we are having so much of diverse languages to be accommodated in our strength of students, then language becomes a very difficult issues because everybody is not empowered the language which we usually adopt in the teaching learning process. So making a kind of
uniform platform and smooth executions of the teaching learning process, language empowerment cell was conceptualized, and it had been rendering its service to all the students of the JNU community who are coming from different language background and accommodating them in such a way that they do not face any problems in the teaching learning process through expertization of their communications. But it's a very happy moment because now it has gone beyond of its limit and it is taking up certain tasks, which is also going in the sphere of sign languages and interpretations of the different languages. It's very important that we are not taking different regional languages and the English languages for making a parity and empowerment among the students. But also we are taking certain languages which will be across different regional languages. The sign languages, there we cannot say that it is different languages or different states. So it is a very, very happy moment that it has increased its sphere of activities along with the given tasks to the language empowerment cell. And we know JNU is one of the central university which is always very committed for the implementations of the tasks given by the constitutions. So in our constitutions, affirmative policies are very, very important. And we always try to complete the tasks given in the constitution towards the affirmative policies. Therefore, that we are having more than 5% admissions of the students, those who are coming from these affirmative policies, particularly in the line of PWD. We usually say that PWD category. And we know that in fact PWD category, a wide range of students usually come. They can have certain difficulties in the speech and hearing. They can have certain difficulties in the seeing or visual difficulties, or they may have certain difficulties in their physical form. So we can say that it can be certain problems toward the limb or muscles or whatever. So we usually take the admissions to all these categories of the students and we complete that whatever the percentage has given, JNU is doing. In that way, we are very, very inclusive in terms of that. Not only that, giving the access to admissions in JNU in terms of the constitutional responsibilities, but also whenever we are giving them admissions in the JNU, we also take care of that. They should get fullest utilizations of the academic atmosphere of the university. So in that way, just not only we are giving discussions and teaching learning processes restricted within the classroom, but starting from the gate of entry of JNU till to the classrooms, we have taken care of that physically they should not get any difficulties to have the access in and every spheres of the university. If you see, the JNU has taken fullest effort and it has implemented that our accessibility of all kind of PWD students should be there. And I hope if certain lacunas are there, where in that sphere we can have certain improvement or the scopes is there, that we are always ready to do it. But to us, we have tried our best to keep the accessibility to all these sort of students. As I told, that they have also wide range within their category. And time to time, we have also taken care of that these students are also to be actually oriented regarding the specialties, whatever we are giving. So there are sorts of different sorts of orientations. And the need of the orientations for these students will also be different because this is not a homogeneous category. As I told, someone will have the speech and hearing difficulties, someone will have the physical difficulties, someone will have the seeing difficulties, and someone will have some other difficulties. And when we interact with these sorts of students and seeing their capabilities, otherwise, when we say that they are having certain difficulties, then we find it is not that category is having difficulties, but the other categories, whoever are having certain categorizations in the name of their the general students, or they don't have any physical difficulties. Actually, they have their difficulties to understand the way they are progressing these sorts of students. So always when we attend in such forum, and there we find that we have certain difficulties. We, the people, those we think that we don't have any difficulties, but the other persons, those who are categorized as difficulties, but they are doing very good, and we need to actually having certain capabilities to merge with these sections of the students of the persons. So the symposium, whatever has been arranged here towards that specific, particularly interpretations and sign languages. So one source of students within these categories is being addressed, and I hope it will be very, very fruitful and successful discussions and deliberations where all the targeted group will have a huge benefit of it. I welcome all the participants here and wish a very, very grand success of the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for highlighting the beauty of being diverse and the role being played by the linguistic empowerment cell, Jawaharlal Nehru University. We are truly honored to have Dr. Brenda Nicodemus from Gallaudet University, USA, with us. Dr. Nicodemus will now share her thoughts and provide a very brief overview of the symposium theme. Dr. Nicodemus, please.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'll just say one brief word as I was sitting here about the names of linguistic empowerment. It's very, very powerful to me because language is about power. Learning a sign language gave me the power to interact with my deaf colleagues and friends. And the languages that you are studying, French, German, other languages, are giving you the power to move out in the world and make those connections with people globally. So I love the name Linguistic Empowerment, and I look forward to having more time to talk with you about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Nicodemus. You have been so brief in your address. Next we have, and thank you for your address. Next, we are privileged to have Dr. Marty Taylor, a renowned expert in sign language interpretation from Canada. Dr. Taylor, we now request you to share a brief overview about this symposium. Over to you, Dr. Taylor.
everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I continue all day to be very impressed with all that I've seen and what people have said and what people have done. And with the turnout here of so many deaf individuals and individuals who are interested in sign language and other languages as well. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and I feel very honored by the dignitaries and by all of you in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor, for your address. Now with this, we have completed our inaugural session. Now the next session will be the technical session. And before we move to the technical session, I request we have Professor Preeti Das, Chief Coordinator, Linguistic Empowerment Cell, JNU. I now request her to kindly deliver her address and share her thoughts with us. Over to you, Professor Das.
Good afternoon, everyone, distinguished guests, esteemed participants. First of all, let me once again welcome you to JNU, this campus. We've been talking about, and as Dr. Venda before we mentioned, language is a power. And we've been talking about that linguistic empowerment cell. Let me first give a brief two-liner about this linguistic empowerment cell. So this is a unique cell which is created, which is kind of a capacity building program, which effectively empowers students admitted in various courses in JNU from diverse academic backgrounds, marginalized sections of the society and remote regions of the country. It caters to the need of linguistic languages of these students who may find it hard to cope up with their regular programs in their respective schools and centers. So overall, linguistic empowerment cell caters to the JNU as a whole. It's not particular center or particular school. It caters to entire JNU community, the language need of these students. Since it came into existence in 2011, over 2,750 students have been academically benefited. The courses it offers is the English language or two-level English language courses. One is the communication skill and the other one is English for academic writing. And these courses, in fact, help in creative expressions. These programs offered by the LEC. Let me also take a break here and tell you that it's a very, very small cell. There are two key faculties, Dr. Gariba Dalal and Dr. Sandesha Rayappa, and only such a small like two faculties catering to the need of entire JNU community in itself is a commendable job that they are doing. And it is the program that is being offered by the LEC are designed to help students not only to understand academic content, but also express their own creativity and ideas effectively within their chosen field of study. And also the maximizing the potential, the learning potential. So through these initiatives, the LEC empowers students to realize their full creative potential, ensure that they can fully get engaged with and contribute to the academic community at Jawaharlal Nehru University. We also had collaboration in the past couple of years. We had collaboration with the ISLRTC. Multiple workshops and courses were taught. In fact, 3 days in a week, the courses were taught at the Jawaharlal Nehru University with the help of in collaboration with the ISLRTC. And we look forward to renew this collaboration and restore back these classes that used to be held in collaboration with the ISLRTC. So thank you so much. Look forward for the like a revival of the contract. And as already mentioned, that our collaboration is practically done. It was in the process in the last couple of months, I believe. But then it is more or less sorted. We are looking forward, and I wish all the very best to this symposium. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for highlighting the major activities of Linguistic Empowerment Cell. Now, thank you so much, all the dignitaries, for your address. Now the inaugural session is over. Now we are moving towards the technical session. Before that, I request all the dignitaries to please take your respective seat. They are in the front. So thank you so much. We now move to our first technical session. Here is a brief biodata of our two resource persons. First is Professor Brenda Nicodemus, PhD, is a professor emerita from Gallaudet University's Department of Interpretation and Translation Studies, and the former director of the Center for Interpretation and Translation Research. An author and editor of 6 books on sign language interpreting, she has extensive experience in the field since 1989. Dr. Nicodemus continues her work as an interpreter and is currently co-authoring a book about interpreting for deaf professionals. Our second resource person is Dr. Martin Taylor. She is PhD and is a founder of Interpreting Consolidated, a company that provides consultation, evaluation, research, and publishing services to interpreting communities globally. With over 3 decades of experience as an interpreter, educator, and researcher, she holds National Interpreter Certification in both Canada and the United States. Dr. Taylor has authored 2 books on interpretation and currently serves as the lead research consultant for Sign Language Institute Canada. Now I request both the resource persons to start the technical session, and this session promises to be insightful, and we look forward to learning from Dr. Nicodemus and Dr. Taylor. So it's over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Everyone. Very nice to be here. It's so exciting. And I can't believe the great honor that it is to light your candle of knowledge and to be given a shawl and a plant. It's really a great honor. And so thank you very much for that. We're both very excited to be here today. And before we begin, I have to offer my thanks to the ISLRTC for their gracious hosting of us. They've been nothing but nice and fed us so much food. So that's been wonderful, as well as thanks to JNU for hosting us here today. And we want to give a special thanks to Mr. Nair too, who from ISLRTC has been so generous with giving us his time and sending us messages on WhatsApp at midnight, asking what we want with our tea, what we want for lunch, and just amazing, really. So thank you all so much for this kind reception. That was a very generous introduction, and I just want to say a couple of things about myself before we begin. My name is Brenda Nicodemus, and I have been an interpreter for 36 plus years, more than many of you have been alive. And I want to say that being involved with the deaf community has been deeply meaningful for me and has led me on my career path. If you're wondering yourself as students what you can do with your studies, I wanted just to give you a feel for the path that the deaf community has led me on. That was to get a PhD in linguistics. I was able to work as a research scientist in a cognitive lab, looking at the brains of deaf people and their language use. I was able to teach at Gallaudet University, both deaf and hearing students. And in that role, I was the director of a research center. That has led me to a very rich life experience. But I want to show you a photo of where it began, and that is with my deaf cousin. That's me on the left, hanging out with my deaf cousin, Karen. And Karen was really the inspiration for my entire life and my entire career. So I want to thank the deaf community for giving me the gift of your language, for the gift of your community and your support as I have been able to be involved with you. Thank you so much.
Hello again, everyone. My name is Marty Taylor, and I also am an interpreter with many years. I won't tell you how many years of experience because I don't want to show up Dr. Nicodemus. But you can tell by my hair that I'm a little bit more experienced. I am a certified interpreter. I have been teaching interpreters for also many decades. I am an author of books, I'm a researcher, I do a bit of everything. And one of my most recent experiences is being on the National Board of Directors for the National Canada VRS, which was just instituted a few years ago. And I became interested in sign language because of a deaf girl on a bus. She went to a school nearby me in high school, grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we often rode the same bus. So she taught me a little bit of sign language. And then I kept going from there. My mother took me and my deaf friend to a deaf theater performance. I didn't understand anything, nothing at all. But I kept being with my friends. And then I started going to college and learning sign language and learning to be an interpreter. So as many of you, you're in that same boat as where I was many years ago. So please continue the journey. And I might see you in 10, 20 years and you'll say, I remember that at this university, JNU, and you'll say, I remember you speaking, and I'll say, yes, I remember you talking while I was speaking. Oh, just teasing. That's who I am.
We would be making a mistake if we didn't recognize what ISLRTC has been doing. Much more than we even thought from our meeting this morning with the director. But we wanted just to highlight and thank you for the work that you're doing. We think the ISL dictionary is amazing. It's growing. It's using the resources of the deaf community. And we're very pleased to see the work that you're doing, making it available online. We have to recognize the diploma in sign language interpreting that is producing some of the interpreters that you're seeing today and the amazing work they are going to do in your country. We're thrilled to see the number of deaf students who are learning how to teach ISL in India. Very exciting groups of people. Your library and information center is a wonderful resource. You're also providing yourselves as a resource to the country by doing trainings, by making a directory of sign language interpreters, by listing all of the deaf schools in the country, and more and more and more. It's so impressive. Trainings. We were told about all of the places that ISLRTC is going to teach parents and teachers and deaf students and hearing people about sign language. So impressive. And finally, the website, which pulls it all together in such a beautiful way. So we congratulate you for what you're doing at ISLRTC. Thank you so much for your contribution. Our plan for today is as follows. We asked Mr. Nair to collect some questions for us so we could try to address some things that you might be thinking about. He sent us the questions, and when we looked at them, we put them in 3 buckets of information. The first one being interpreter education questions. The second one being questions about research about interpreting. And the third one was kind of a big bag of other things. So today we're going to structure our talk around these 3 areas. I also want to mention that because we're a visual crowd, we're going to take little pauses, let you look at our PowerPoint, and then proceed talking. So the talk can be as accessible as possible in a visual environment like today.
Network का मात्र है.
Before we begin, we thought it would be great to give a little context about where we're coming from. So Dr. Taylor is coming from way up north there in the cold area of Canada, Edmonton, Alberta. And I'm coming from where Gallaudet is located, Washington, D.C. And we got on a plane and came here and we're thrilled.
It's the first time for both of us to come to India. And so far, the Delhi people are friendly, helpful, and kind.
We thought it might be helpful for you to know a little bit more about where we're coming from in the context of the United States and Canada, to give you a feel so you can compare it with what's going on in your country. Our total population in the United States, 335 million. We don't have one official language, but by default, English is our national language. Our second language of use is Spanish, and that is because we border Mexico and South and Central America. So we have many immigrants that come up, and there's a lot of Spanish in the United States, along with a wide variety of languages. We have about 38 people per square kilometer. And we don't know exactly how many deaf and hard of hearing people we have in the United States because we don't have a national survey. But the best estimates that we have are 500,000 to 2 million deaf and hard of hearing and deafblind people who use sign language as their everyday language.
And looking at Canada, we have a big 40 million people, which is very small, especially compared to India in terms of our population numbers. We do have 2 official languages, English and French, and they're both used throughout the country. When you look at the population density, we have about 4 people in a square kilometer. When we looked at India, you have over 400 people per square kilometer. So you can see the difference between 38 in the United States, or we have a lot of empty space in Canada, especially because we have the Arctic. Canada is surrounded by 3 oceans. The Pacific Ocean, the Arctic Ocean in the north, and the Atlantic on the east. And our estimate is very rough. Our Canadian census is not good at determining who are deaf and who use sign language. And sometimes the number is confounded because they ask the question, what language do you use at work? And sometimes hearing people use sign language. So they mark that as using sign language, and then that gets converted into, oh, they're deaf, which is not necessarily the case. So right now, the estimate's about 340,000 deaf, hard of hearing, deafblind people who use sign language.
We've been told that in India, the number of deaf and hard of hearing people also has a broad guess between nearly 2 million to 7 million. We're not sure about that. If you want to fill us in later on a better estimate, please let us know. wanted to provide a little context about some powerful things that have happened in our countries, just like in India. The laws changed the way we do our business. And in the United States, that really began in the 70s. We had an act in 1973 from the government that said, hey, we want deaf people to be working and paying taxes, just like non-deaf people. Some of these deaf people are not working. We've got to get them to work. So, and law was passed to help rehabilitate, get deaf people into job placement. That started a need for interpreters more than before. In 1975, another big law was passed. It said that deaf students could be mainstreamed in their local schools rather than going to a deaf boarding school. Well, suddenly the United States was not prepared for the number of interpreters it needed to fill these classrooms, but it created an enormous demand for trained interpreters in 1975. We have a Court Interpreting Act, but the big one is the last one. In 1990, the United States passed what's called the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is committed to providing equity for all citizens of the United States, despite what might be perceived as a language difference or a disability or a mobility impairment. And that has really changed the world for deaf people in the United States.
On the Canadian side, we have the Canadian Human Rights Act, which was also in the 70s, the late 70s. And it was not only around disability groups, but also around general human rights, rights related to differences in color, differences in religion, differences in beliefs. So it also encompasses disability and therefore deaf people and their right to communication. Then in 82, that law was made more powerful and more specific by talking about the Charter of Rights and Freedom. And it actually was put into the Constitution, which is not an easy job to add to the Constitution of Canada. But that also helped all kinds of people, including deaf people, and the right to interpreters. As recently as 2016, we started ERS, Video Relay Services. And that was a huge undertaking. We're very behind the United States in offering that service, but we learned a lot from the United States in putting together what we thought would work for Canada. So far, it works 24/7, 365 days a year. And because we're a bilingual country, we work with 4 languages, English and ASL, American Sign Language, French, and French Sign Language. And the French Sign Language population is quite a bit smaller. So we're having more of a challenge finding interpreters in that area to keep up with the demand of the French deaf people who want to make phone calls. So we're trying to train more interpreters in that area as best we can. And then most recently and more directed toward deaf people is the Accessibility Canada Act. And that just means that across the country, as well as some provinces, have legislated that deaf people not only have the right to their sign language, but they also have the right for it to be their first language. They have the right that that's their language of instruction. Does not have to be English. It does not have to be oral. It has to be sign language. And so that was a significant law that, again, very recent in 2019 occurred.
To look. Dr. Taylor and I just wanted to point out some of the key organizations, and we feel very fortunate to have our honored guest here. He's the Indian Association of the Deaf president. The National Association of the Deaf in the United States has been a very powerful organization. And I was telling a funny story to Dr. Taylor before we got here. And that is that the president of the National Association of the Deaf would often come to my classrooms at Gallaudet, and he had something that he liked to say. He was deaf, and he was a lawyer, and he always liked to say, you know, Dr. Nicodemus, what my favorite word is? And I'd say, no, Howie, what's your favorite word? And he said, my favorite word is sue. I like to bring lawsuits against people. I want to sue people who are breaking our laws. He got such a thrill out of bringing people who were violating the law to court. So the NAD has been a very powerful advocate for deaf people in the United States in so many ways. The second organization for interpreters is also very powerful. It was started in 1964. So that's a long time ago. And we have 16,000 members, which is quite a few. 10,000 are certified interpreters. And because of the growing need of deaf interpreters, we have now 207 certified deaf interpreters. And the last box there just shows you that we have a lot of diverse organizations. We have the Conference of Interpreter Trainers that's designed to help people who teach interpreting, like the many great teachers at ISLRTC. We have an association of Black interpreters because we have a very big African-American community. We have an organization for interpreters who work in educational settings. And we have an interpreter organization for interpreters who work between Spanish and American Sign Language. Trust me, there are many, many more organizations, but I wanted to give you a feel for some of the diversity of our organizations in the US.
We will be taking a 2 minute break just to kind of move the tables from the front. Just give it a 2 minute break. If anybody wants to go to the washrooms are at the right end and at the left. Okay. Actually, let's take the break. The people need to go to the washroom and come back. Return quickly. All right, quickly.
I'm starting.
One of our big challenges is that we don't have entry requirements all of our programs. So somebody who saw a deaf person on television and thought, hey, that looks cool, can just go to an interpreter education program and say, I want to be an interpreter without knowing deaf culture, without ever having seen signs, without ever having met a deaf person. So because our colleges and universities are very open, people can just come and don't have the background ready to do the work. We need entrance requirements. So we can actually produce interpreters that are skilled enough to work with deaf people. There's another problem we have, readiness for work. Our interpreters might go through a 4-year program and they're really not prepared still to do the work. They might be a beginner, but then they get called to go interpret for a deaf person who is getting a cancer diagnosis or is going to court, interpret a funeral, and they're not skilled enough. They don't have enough life experience. They don't have enough language yet. Interpreting takes a long time to perfect. It's actually a lifelong pursuit. So for all of you who are interpreting students now, you get your certificate, you are far from done. You will be doing this study for the rest of your life. So we have a real problem with interpreters not being prepared. A third thing is that people don't always recognize the professional status of interpreters. They just want to say, oh, you don't need an interpreter, just read my lips. You don't need an interpreter here, Ron. I don't want to pay for an interpreter. Or who are these people coming in and interrupting us? I'm your doctor, you're my deaf patient. We don't need that person, make them go away. So we don't always get the professional recognition that interpreters should have. Our interpreters also have disparities or insufficient amounts of different genders, different racial categories. So a Black deaf person may say, I would really like to have a Black female interpreter to go with me to my appointment with the doctor. Do you think we can fill that? Not very often. We don't have enough Black interpreters, interpreters that know Spanish, interpreters with different backgrounds. Most of our interpreters in the United States, 87% are women. So if a man says, I'm going for a very personal physician's exam and I don't want an interpreter who is a female there, they often can't get them. So we have a real imbalance, gender and race in the United States for our interpreters. Bottom line is we don't have enough. I know India doesn't have enough interpreters either. And we were talking right at lunch saying there'll probably never be enough interpreters because deaf people are just doing better things all the time. They're going to school, they're getting better jobs, they're becoming presidents of the National Association. And we just don't have enough interpreters to meet what the deaf people are doing. So we're always chasing to try to keep up. Remember, I said, and you know, because you're students, it takes a long, long time to be an interpreter. It takes years and years and the rest of your life to be a skilled interpreter. So that's very hard to cultivate quickly. So we probably never have enough interpreters. And then finally, we have more and more deaf professionals in the United States, deaf lawyers, deaf doctors, deaf veterinarians, deaf academics, deaf biologists, deaf are doing amazing things with their life. Interpreters sometimes aren't skilled enough to keep up with them. They've studied biology through the doctoral program, and the interpreter comes with their first year interpreting certificate. It really doesn't match the need of our growing deaf professional body in the United States. It's a problem.
Canada doesn't have any problems. I'm kidding. We have plenty of problems. We also do not have enough interpreters, especially not enough in the rural communities. Often those interpretation jobs have to be done remotely. And thank goodness COVID pushed our interpreters to work online. So at least deaf people living in rural communities can access an interpreter, but often not in person.
देखो इनसे पूछूंगा और आज
We also have deaf students in
शाम को
schools,
शाम को
public schools. So starting from grade 1 to grade 12. And they're in a mainstream setting and they require interpreters. We don't have enough of those. And also, in the interpreting programs, we don't have a standard curriculum. So what I used in my program was not the same as what Brenda used in her program. And that's even across the 5 programs we have remaining in Canada. So if we could be more consistent, that would help. Because then I could improve a piece of the curriculum. My colleague in another province with their interpreting program could improve another piece of the curriculum. And then we could share and add it to the standard curriculum. So if you have an opportunity to create a standard curriculum for interpreter education, it will give you a head start from then on. Yes, we have students who are learning sign language while they're learning interpreting. And that's a bad combination. If they're just improving their sign language, that's okay. In Canada, all 5 of our programs do have prerequisites. They have to know ASL. But they're not fluent. The students who apply are not fluent in ASL. So it would be nice if they had better skills before they entered the program so that they're not learning sign language and learning interpreting. That's one of the things that holds them back. It's hard to progress when you're doing both simultaneously. We're also lacking interpreters for deafblind people. However, because we have more and more deaf interpreters, those interpreters are filling a gap. They don't have to be hearing interpreters. So for example, right now, if we had a couple of deafblind people in here, deaf interpreters, it would be interpreting for them. And the deaf interpreters would watch this interpreter here, who's doing a marvelous job. And then interpret that to the deaf blind person. And so you could have 10, 20, 30 deafblind people, and therefore you could have 36 deaf interpreters working with those individuals. And then there's the lack of funding. If the college and university isn't willing funding sign language or interpreting, we lose out. The province is cutting programs. Deafness is a low incidence disability, doesn't occur often. Sometimes it's not seen as it should be, which is, it's very visible. And it's very necessary. If we move along and we continue to see interpreters on TV, sometimes in Canada, those interpreters are deaf. Those are not hearing interpreters. And deaf people love that. They love to see emergencies signed by a deaf person on camera, on TV, to let them know what's going on. And part of that is because some of our interpreters aren't very competent or are less competent than a deaf interpreter is. Always need to have some money, and it's nice to see that the government and this university receive money and are supporting these initiatives with interpreters and sign language.
Okay, so we got a question about technology and interpreting in the United States and Canada. And we have a few things to say. We do offer online courses. I know that's a path that the ISLRTC is pursuing as well. One thing we do that's fun is that when we have deaf students, we use teleprompters. So they don't always work off hearing interpreters, they work off like a camera roll where they're reading the English and then translating it into ASL nearly simultaneously, and they practice that way. There are lots of software packages we use in our programs that we'd be happy to share with you. We do video relay service and video relay interpreting simulations in our classrooms. A visual language lab, just having labs with private rooms with computers for videotape study. And of course, we use Zoom a lot in our classrooms. For example, my classroom, I can't have all of the amazing people in the United States be there, but I'll set up a Zoom call and have Dr. Chris, who is a deaf physician, come and talk to my class, or have a deaf lawyer talk to my class from all over the United States and the world. So those are some of the ways we use technology.
And here we're talking about, there was a question from the group. What are some strategies and activities for teaching interpretation? Well, there's a million of them, and you've experienced a number of them. We've written a few here that we think are significant. And the first one is engage with the deaf community. Well, you're doing it here. We have never seen such strong deaf community members taking classes at the same time. Hearing people are learning ISL and learning to be interpreters. So you're creating your own community, and inviting in more deaf people is a possibility. But you have plenty already between your instructors, professors. You have a lot going on for you. We also noticed this morning that the groups of students, you're expanding all the time at ISLRTC. You can see the classes are getting a little more crowded, but to make do, ideally we have small classes. It can't always happen because the demand is so high. You have to have more students in the class, and then the instructor is responsible to make that work.
One thing that we suggest is a situated learning approach to education. And by that, we mean that students might learn best by actually experiencing simulated situations in the classroom. And I just bring up this book because a doctoral student of mine and I wrote this, and has many, many examples of how to set up situated learning experiences for students in the classroom. We think it's a good approach. Of course, because there's no standard curriculum, we often create our own curriculum materials. We suggest you do the same. We're sure you're doing the same. Just drawing on one another as instructors and asking students what's effective. Create your own materials.
I want to just mention about using your training, developing your own materials. I used to live in the United States, and then I moved to Canada and set up an interpreting program there because there was a need. The deaf community wanted it. The college was willing to set one up. But it didn't have a single Canadian piece of material. All the things I had, I brought with me from the United States, and they were all things that I was teaching with down there, but they were so American. They weren't Canadian. So immediately we pursued funding in order to create videos of deaf people from Canada, from across Canada, because our country is so large. We have different signs in different areas. So you might see 5 different signs for birthday, depending on where you live. You might see different signs that mean vodka, a liquor. Yeah, vodka. Never know how that's going to be signed. So developing your own ISL materials is crucial. And then your curriculum and those materials go hand in hand. Another thing that's useful, how many of you have heard of Go React? Anybody? It's called Go React. Okay, this is a very useful for both students and instructors. I would highly recommend it. It's a program that records, you can record whatever you want. And then you divide that recording into minuscule pieces. And you can critique any piece you want. So if it's critiquing your sign language, you can choose the exact point where I want to make a comment to the student. I can type it in, I can sign it wherever I want. I can mark it with yellow, meaning, this is a consistent problem that I'm seeing. And so when the student opens it up, they'll see yellow dots, yellow dots, yellow dots, and then they'll look at that pattern and try to remediate that consistent issue. Go React was first created for sports, professional sports. So if people were playing football, the football player was recorded kicking the ball, hitting with their head, heading the ball. And then that would be recorded and then they would be reviewed. And exactly where it hit them on the head would be discussed and commented on. And if that happened a few times in the recording, they would say, see, this worked. You had more facility, more directionality that you could do with that, but not when you hit it in this area of your head. So it's a great program. It's available. I would highly recommend it. It's not very expensive.
You and your program here at ISL, RTC have mentors that work with your students. We would just encourage you to keep doing that and set up mentorship programs for after graduation from the certificate. Our students at Gallaudet say one thing consistently: my mentor was probably the best part of my training program at Gallaudet. So I would really strongly encourage you to strengthen that part of your program. We have something called elder parents in Canada, where we'll take an older deaf person and put them with a young interpreting student. And they meet regularly, correct? You want to talk about this, Loma?
That they meet regularly, and those meetings are often structured by the instructor. They might be, ask the deaf person these questions, talk about these things, and those are based on what's happening in the classroom. But it's an opportunity for the deaf community to get to know the interpreter and vice versa. It develops a relationship across the term of instruction.
And finally, I know in your program to train the interpreter, you already have practicums, internships, and then inductions with other professionals to lead you into the field. We would say this is a critical part. Keep it up. Wonderful strategy.
Here is one way of assessing language skills. It's a standard way. It's called the Common European Framework of Reference for Language, or CEFR, CEFR. And I forgot to say, this is how it's signed, CEFR. It's the curriculum. It's the standard of any language. It is used both for spoken languages and for sign languages. It is an assessment of levels of where you are. The top level, of course, is nativeness. And the level right under that is near nativeness. And it can clearly describe what the student needs to demonstrate in order to receive a certain mark. And even though European is in the name, it's used throughout the world. We use it in Canada, Switzerland, Brazil, Hong Kong. It's used around the world. It's very strong. I would highly recommend it, depending on what you're using now to assess language skills. This would provide consistency and standardization.
This is a question we got. Can you provide some strategies for artistic texts? How do you interpret artistic texts? Such as literature, ABC stories, alphabet stories, music, drama, theater. How do you guys do that in the United States and Canada? So we have a little bit of advice. Maybe you're already doing it. The first thing is that we recommend that you start a practice of hiring a deaf director of artistic sign language. In the United States, they call them dazzles. Dazzles, it sounds so exciting. Those people come in and help the interpreters and the theater group with what is going to make a visually accessible artistic performance. They don't work alone. Second point is that they bring in deaf advisors to help them. Deaf people often do things in a group and they want to collaborate about what is actually accessible. Kind of simple, but get the lyrics and the scripts in advance. Don't just act like an add-on. Work closely with the theater or the performers, the actors. Say you're part of the show and you need to be an important part of the show. Record your rehearsals in advance so you can study them, just like cricket players do, to see the moves that are important. And always position, like in this picture, the interpreter somewhere near the performance so that deaf audience members can see what's going on stage as well as seeing the interpreters. We think it's best practice to meet with deaf audience members in advance of the show to indicate what sign names are going to be used for certain characters. And we even create a guidebook often to say, here's a summary of the story. Here's what the characters look like. Here's their name sign. Here's what you can expect by intermission. After intermission, there'll be 3 songs. So it sort of helps the deaf audience member to get ready for what the interpreters are going to do. And then finally, we suggest that you work with the theater to put in captioning. Some deaf people prefer captioning, or they like it in tandem with the interpreter. So these are a few suggestions we would give you.
One of the other questions that came up was guidance. What guidance can we offer on educational degree programs for interpreters? I believe ISLRTC is already developing a baccalaureate degree. It's in their goals. So Brenda and I were talking about this and we thought it would be ideal to have a baccalaureate degree in ISL. We wish we had that in ASL or French Sign Language in Canada. We don't. We would also like to see in our programs, and I'm not sure about your programs, but we would like to see the spoken language, Hindi or whatever languages you're using, to also be assessed upon entry into the programs, because sometimes the spoken language can also be an issue. And so to assess that before entering the program is useful, especially the fact that ISLRTC has a high demand for applicants. You can be choosy. test them, how their sign language skills are and what their linguistic spoken language skills are. Then after that 4-year language degree, then have an interpretation program. 1 year, 2 years, create a postgraduate certificate for specializations like in healthcare, legal, educational. I feel this is already covered. You probably are learning a lot about world knowledge from each other, from the instructors, and from your day-to-day living. But continue to be attentive to world knowledge. How does it work to go to a bank? How does it work to go to a funeral home? How does do those things? Go with your friends, family to experience those things. Because otherwise, if you wind up interpreting in that setting and you've never been in that setting, it's tough. Deaf interpreters and hearing interpreters working together. And this means what I've already seen at the ISLRTC is you have what's going on. And I'm sure there's a dovetail occurring, that you're working in collaboration, that the hearing interpreters are working with the deaf interpreters and vice versa, so that you both are learning the same things and you can learn from each other. And I missed CODAs. I'm not sure what term you use here, but it's children of deaf adults. Then here, CODA. So CODAs are a bit different from people who have hearing parents, like me, for example. So working with CODAs as a group to talk about the differences of being raised in a deaf family as compared to being raised in a hearing family is often useful, beneficial. And then conduct research on effective teaching methods. I think Brenda has something to say about this.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Someone wrote in that they were concerned about interpreters graduating from a certificate program and then not paying any attention to what their deaf instructor had told them about ethical behavior. So how can we shape the ethics of interpreters? Well, you might have to build it in to your program. First of all, you have to include deaf people. What do deaf people think is ethical and not ethical? And then you probably need to set up a system to monitor it, tie it to a code of professional conduct, have protocols for how you can report unethical behavior, and have a professional oversight group that can take action against people who are just breaking all the ethical rules by charging too much or falling asleep on the job or getting too personal with deaf people. And then teach those standards in your programs that have already been established. You have to establish your code first and then just make them a part of your curriculum.
Another question that came in was, what are some methods for students and novices to independently develop their skills? This was an easy one because we have to do it all the time. Watching YouTube is available 24/7. You can do that anytime. Playing memory games, working on crossword puzzles, trying to make your mind work before you look it up on Google. Read captioning aloud, listen to the radio and copy what it is you're hearing, copy their tone, copy their pace. Maybe they speak much faster than you or much slower than you. It's good practice. do forward and back translations. Battle videos, and really work with the colleague for accountability, kind of like if you're going out for a run, and you're gonna go out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do the same with the colleague relating to sign language and interpreting. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 to 10.
Okay, that was a big barrel of information, but we're going to talk a little bit about questions that we got about interpreting research. One thing we want to point out right away is that there is a growing number of books about doing research that we would encourage you to purchase and have in your library if you don't already. There are more and more articles you can find on Google Scholar.
And then there are other research resources, and we found this one. How many of you are familiar with this book?
Sure.
Indian Sign Language. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, don't know it. 6. You study for this? JNU. Oh. He got his PhD here. Well, you should be very proud. So, there you go. Read from your own authors here in India. And up there are a few other sites that you might be interested in finding other materials.
We had a question for you, and that is, your questions came to us, but we wondered if it might be a possibility for the ISLRTC to set up their own press someday. And Dr. Taylor has a lot of experience with that, so she's going to ask you some questions to get you thinking about it.
First off, do you have a press? Does JNU have a press? A press as in a publishing house. Individual schools have a publishing house. Okay, does the ISLRTC have a publishing house? In-house? Not yet, so it's one of the possibilities. Where are materials published on ISL and interpreted? Is there a market for you to have a press, a publishing house? Who's writing about ISL? We found one. I'm sure there's many others. Establish a team of content experts to approve proposals, solicit proposals. And you just go down the list of what you might do to determine and set up a publishing house so that you have your material and you are sharing it across India and around the world. And print, and market it broadly. It was not easy for us to find materials on ISL, except for the one book and things that are on the website for ISLRTC.
A dream for them. I think they could do that.
I do too.
Some ideas we wanted to share with you. We have about 10 minutes left, so bear with us here. But we want to talk a little bit more about your research center, the part of research, not instruction, and how you can engage teaching and learning in your research efforts, how you can cultivate a research culture, how you can partner, which you're already doing fabulously, and then how you can spread the news. So we want to touch on those 4 areas kind of briefly.
Start with your own students. Gosh, you have over 300 students at the ISLRTC. Who are they? Where are they from? Keep records of who they are. Demographic information is good to keep. Who's staying in the program? Who leaves the program? Who graduates from the program? So it's an easy place to start. And then once they graduate, what are they doing 1 year later, 2 years later? Document that whole document that whole series of information because it's new. And to document it means you have proof. And then you can get more funding, you can make adjustments because now you're showing people who have been out there 1 year earn $30 an hour. People who have been out there 2 years earn $50 an hour. So start right there and also mark where the development is with their first language and with their second language. Sign language might be their first language, Hindi might be their second language, but mark those throughout their training.
Some other ways that you can include teaching and learning and research, we would encourage you to do, is train your students and your faculty on specific research programs, like Elan, like In Vivo, like Qualtrics. And if you don't know these, I'm happy to share more about them. If they're good research tools for you to do analysis. You could set up research reading groups with your students or just with the faculty to talk about one research article and get ideas from how it might apply to you. You could have little mini lectures from either the students or faculty and include your students in your research. For example, if you're a faculty member and you want to do a research project, ask the students to do part of it for you, just to analyze one sign and then incorporate it in. You can talk as faculty about different issues in research and publication, like who's the first author of this article? How do we decide that? Some of these presses come to me and they seem like they're recruiting and publishing them, but they say I have to pay them. What's that about? Predatory publishers. Things like that. Talk about issues that come up in publishing. And then the second to the last thing is create more symposium, lecture series, and summer research institutes. And I can see that you're already doing a lot of training. Record them, keep them, share them. And if you can get money, ask students if they would be your research assistants and then pay them for the experience of working with you as faculty members. We want to touch briefly on creating a culture of research at the ISLRTC and at JNU for that example, for that matter. Sometimes you need someone to lead the charge. You need a lead researcher. It needs to be official designation. Make sure they have a team that wants to do research. Make sure your research always benefits the deaf community. Don't do some random research just because it's interesting, but it has no application to the deaf community. Use an approach called community-based participatory research. Include deaf people from the very beginning through the whole research project to the very end, asking for their advice, asking them to be subjects. And of course, acknowledging them or making them co-authors. That's even better. Have deaf panels to review your different ideas for research topics. They'll tell you, we don't need this, we need this. So ask deaf people constantly what they want to see you doing as researchers. Recognize people who are supporting you, whether it's faculty, students, partners in the community, government. Recognize, and honor them. Go to more conferences because you learn maybe just one interesting thing at a conference and bring it back, and then at your lunch meeting, share what you learned at the conference. And finally, you probably have to apply for and win some more grants. You might need a professional grant writer. Maybe you can contract with someone to help you find grants in India so you can do specific research projects.
Partner with everyone. I believe you are already doing that, both JMU, ISLRTC. Partner with spoken language interpreters, spoken languages. Also, that's happening right now. We talked to a couple of students who are studying French, Spanish, German. They're pretty impressive. Take advantage of them and also their instructors and the faculty here. On the last piece there, it talks about establish a visiting scholars program. And that's about really having a place for a visiting scholar to come to your institution, university, or the research center that stays there for a period of time. Might be 3 months, might be 6 months. And they come for a specific purpose. Maybe it's research, maybe it's teaching, maybe they're doing their own research, but have a space for a visiting scholar. And maybe one of your faculty or students can be a visiting scholar elsewhere.
So we talked a little bit about how to incorporate research and teaching and learning. We talked about how to partner. We talked about how to set up a research culture. And the last thing is to spread the news. We've already touched on it, but honestly, you need to share your news in publications, conferences, social media, and newspapers. You're already doing it quite beautifully. So I think you've got this down. Probably going to take about 5 more minutes to wrap up the last part. That's okay. Because we want to cover other topics that we got questions about. And the first one is about the shortage of sign language interpreters.
Part of the reason we have the shortage is because the deaf people who are currently mainstreamed are getting a different kind of education than those in schools for the deaf. So in mainstreaming, they're not getting the language, either the Hindi, written Hindi, or the some Indian Sign Language. And we have that problem in Canada and the United States as well. And so by the time they finish high school, they're way behind. So part of the shortage of interpreters is that they're needed in those schools, but what's happening in those schools is always an interesting thing to find out. Because we have TV and public appearances of deaf people. It's becoming more popular. We can get interpreters in the public domain, even symbolic interpreting. Like, we could have an interpreter right here with no deaf people in the audience, just to show that this is possible. And we've seen this happen already when we toured ISLRTC. We saw how much training and interpreting as a profession is being marketed and how word of mouth is being spread. And now there's a waiting list for people to come to the research center.
One of the questions that we had was about, what do you do during turn taking? Oh my gosh, people are all talking at the same time and I have to interpret it. What do I do? Well, we have a few tips. One is to prepare in advance with the people that are holding the meeting and explain what interpreting is about. I can't interpret when you're all talking at the same time, so try to prepare them. And maybe the meeting host can be responsible for saying, wait a minute, time out, we're not getting access. So work with those people. Sometimes you need to call on the deaf consumer and say, hey, they're all talking over one another. Boy, do deaf people have power to say, stop, we aren't doing this anymore. Coming from us as interpreters, sometimes people don't pay attention. But when the deaf person says, stop right now, I'm not getting the message, it's very powerful. And then use something called attribution, that is pointing, identifying who's speaking, and it's going very rapidly. The girl with the blonde hair, the guy over here with the certain shirt on, the woman in the sari, and so on. So use attribution to help make more sense.
Models of interpretation are based on monologic lecture type speaking. And a colleague and I decided to create a model for interactive, because that's often what we do, is interpreting between two people, a deaf person and a hearing person. So this is a very basic part of the model. The whole thing is, what's the goal of the two people? And that's at the center at the top. And it includes the context and the content. As you start the interpreting process, you're at the bottom. And then as the process continues, you'll create more and more content. All going toward that goal.
अब बंद कर दिया उन्होंने
On one
वहां
side,
से बंद करा
you have the deaf person. On the other side, you have the hearing person. There's a lot of things going on, like noise, a lot of things that I'm gonna show you but not talk about. Also, one of the key elements is the deaf person has their own goal, which is a little off to one side. The hearing person has their own goal, also off to one side. So you have three goals going on. And in the end, it has to get to that one. So at the end of the assignment, the main goal of that meeting has been achieved. I'll show you something. Don't worry about getting it all, but just try to understand it. And you'll see an I, which is the interpreter, going up through that middle, negotiating both sides. The interpreter is busy managing a multi-layer process, which was that red piece, all the time through both the deaf person and the hearing person. There's this multi-layer process going on that the interpreter is doing. Look at what our interpreter is doing. Trying to figure out what the heck I'm saying, working with the PowerPoint, working with two speakers, looking into the audience, managing that multi-layered process.
And we have a few more slides, then we're gonna wrap it up. But one of the questions was, what can interpreters do once they become an interpreter? A lot. Various things, and we're gonna show you some ideas.
So here are some potential jobs, both for deaf interpreters and hearing interpreters. These jobs are mostly related to theater work. There's a lot to be done in theater, especially in Canada. I think the United States, maybe in India. And strictly in our field of sign language, you can be a consultant, a mentor. You can be a mentor your entire life and keep learning.
Okay, this is our last content slide, but we couldn't leave here today without talking about deaf interpreters and what's going on. We want to congratulate you for having such large classes of deaf new teachers that will be graduating who may become interpreters, and you're setting up programs for deaf interpreters. You're really on the cutting edge of things. But yes, the need exists for people who are wildly fluent in their own language, unlike me, who my second language is ASL. And yes, we're recognizing that there's a need for specific training for hearing and deaf interpreters to work together. So, the words you've been waiting for. In conclusion, We have tried to cover 3 areas of questions that you submitted to us about interpreter education, interpreter research, and some other topics that came up. We want to share what the bottom line is for us, and it goes back to the idea of linguistic empowerment, and that is this. For our friends, the biggest strength is sign language. We couldn't agree more. Sign language is where we all become empowered. We want to close with a little love note from us. We're sending it not by airmail, but by PowerPoint mail. And what we want to say is this. You are doing amazing work here. We are so impressed. All the best to you. Thank you so much. And thank you to our wonderful interpreters today. We're doing both Zoom work and in person here with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nicodemus and Dr. Taylor. Your presentation has been very informative and very impressive also. I think it has been impactful. Our students, all the participants who have joined this symposium physically as well as virtually, I think we have learned a lot. It has been very enlightening lecture and presentation. You have very well compared the global perspective from the US and the Canada. You have talked about a little bit about the India also, but in the forthcoming panel discussion, we will have the highlight from the India. So thank you so much. We are really impressed with your friendship, with your joint presentation, and each part of your presentation has been very impactful. So thank you so much for your lovely presentation. We now move to an exciting panel discussion, and the floor is also open for question and answer, which could not be covered under your presentation. Both Dr. Nicodemus and Dr. Taylor will engage in a discussion moderated by Dr. Andesha Mangla, Assistant Professor. So I invite Dr. Andesha Mangla to come on the stage. She is Assistant Professor of Sign Linguistics from ISLRTC. This discussion will provide an opportunity for a deeper insights into the challenges and innovations in interpreting education. So I request Dr. Andesha to come on the stage. I request Mr. Islamul Haq and Sneha Tiwari. They will be just providing the accessibility in the ISL or the questions asked by our DTISL student. They will just summarize their questions. And Dr. Andesha will put forth the Indian perspective in the sign language interpretation and research also. So thank you so much. Now the floor is open. Thank you. So please give the cordless mic also. From that is for audience, and this will be used by the resource persons and the moderator. Any student can ask question. DSL student, DTISL student, any participant may ask question. But let them just set the tone and the panel discussion will start. After that, you can ask the question. Anyone, any participant can ask question.
So Islam sir is saying we have seen both our resource persons and they have presented very well. Now it's your turn to ask your questions, your doubts. So you can ask your questions to both our resource persons.
I request Dr. Andesha Mangla to just have a brief perspective about the Indian context also, and then the floor will be open for question answer.
Thank you, sir. It was a very interesting presentation, I think, and we all learned a lot. I mean, looking at the situation in USA and Canada, I think there are many similarities, some of the aspects that you mentioned with India as well. For example, the need for interpreters. So we need to have more interpreters, but at the same time, we have challenges where we need to check the entry requirements. For example, so how do we balance the two needs is a question. And in India right now, we need so many interpreters because we have a huge. So that was very interesting, I think, looking at that. But there are differences as well, because again, like you mentioned, the population differences are there. But if we look at the field itself, the challenges that you mentioned, I think many of the points we have the same challenges here as well. Or the readiness of interpreters after they graduate. For example, they need more support, they need mentorship, for example. So these are aspects that are very similar here as well. And maybe some students here can share their experiences or can ask questions.
कहाँ देख रही है?
Momentary break while we get our interpreters set.
Your presentation was very beautiful, very positive. So, in ISLRTC, like VRS services is there. So in 1 second.
Worship as in
Canada, like he's saying that in Canada, VRS setup is there in 2016. So there are many members are involved in that. In India, VRS, there is no members. So what is the challenge in that?
So I think the question relates to what you mentioned about Canada, that the VRS, you have a board of, and you're a member of that board, which is monitoring the service or managing the service. So I think that is the question here relating to that. We don't have that, something like that in India.
Let me know if I'm on track. The VRS that we have in Canada has, we are the organization that runs VRS is a middleman, arm's length from the government. So the government provides the money and we run the show. And we hire different organizations to provide VRS. But they have to follow our rules. They have to follow and use our platform that we've created. And they do their own hiring, firing, and payment. But we track everything. We send them the calls, we tell them they need to have 5 interpreters available from these hours. We give interpreters 15-minute breaks every hour so that we don't burn them out. Am I answering your question?
In US, you have 150 programs, but in Canada, only 5 programs. Why there are less programs in Canada?
Because we're so much smaller. We are 10% of what the United States is in terms of population. And some of that percentage are up in the Arctic. So it would be nice if we had 10% of the number of interpreting programs. So the United States has 150. It would be terrific if we had 15. 15 would be amazing. I'd be happy with 10. 10 good programs.
Thank you so much for your answering now. Sign language. In US, ASL people are using, and you have blacks for Black Sign Language Association, right? So you have that, and you have a separate American Sign Language. So I'm talking about ASL for American Sign Language, and from Black people for the sign language. There is it's still going on. The program is still going for the Black Sign Language group. So for Black people also, the sign language course is going on.
Thank you for your question. It's a great question, and there's many layers to it. So I want to try to answer it. One, in the United States, Black people have been segregated for a very long time. And because of that, they developed American Sign Language, but it looks a little different than other forms of American Sign Language. They do call it Black American Sign Language, and it has some linguistic differences. Not all Black people use it, but some do. It's an in-group way of signing. So that's one thing that we have linguistic study about, this Black African American Sign Language, how it differs, what we can learn from it. But I think another part of your question is about the organization for Black interpreters. And Black deaf people, sometimes maybe they use this Black American Sign Language version, maybe they don't, but they just want to see a face that looks like them. They want to have someone from their own community who has the same world experience as them. They may not want my white face showing up with my white privilege coming in. Instead, they want a partner that looks like them, that understands their language better. And sometimes we can't fulfill that. And so it's a way of keeping our Black community oppressed and down, not able to have their full voice. That's why we have an interpreter group that's trying to rally and get more Black hearing interpreters and Black deaf interpreters.
This link for Black American Sign Language interpreter groups, and still there is a separate course for them.
That's interesting that you asked that, because only recently at Gallaudet, they set up a new program. It's really new, 1 year, 2 years old, called Black Deaf Studies. Black Deaf Studies, and it's separate from our other Deaf Studies program. So Black African Americans who are deaf can go into that program and study about their own history, their history of coming from enslaved peoples, their history of being in separate residential schools with the deaf, the history of their language development. So we do have that at Gallaudet now, and that's the only program I'm aware of.
Yes, last. Give the cordless mic.
Hello, good evening, professors. First of all, thank you, professors, for perspective you gave us about sign language interpreters and the deaf community of Canada and USA. I would love to ask questions. What is the difference deaf culture between Canada and USA?
The difference.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Very similar. Although the whole culture in Canada is different from the United States, both hearing and deaf. And yet we speak the same language, except for the French Canadians. In the culture, I would say because we are smaller in Canada, it's easier to function. It's easier to make rules and agreements and understanding between deaf people and hearing people and interpreters. There's a lot of collaboration that's just a lot easier. And in terms of actual differences, it's so similar. So for example, let me ask you if this is something that happens in India. If you go to a place and you're an interpreter or you're a deaf person, and you go to a place you've never been to before, but you meet Isaac. Isaac is deaf. His friend is your friend. Is Isaac especially warm to you? That happens in Canada. If you know somebody, then you're part of their community right away. That does not happen in the hearing community in the same way. For me, it takes me aback to be accepted so quickly in the deaf community because I know somebody. Is that similar here in India? Not so much. Okay, Brenda.
Well, one thing I would add too is, and I'm sure this is true in India, but in the United States, people speak much slower in the South. They have different foods in the South, and people sign more slowly in the South. And when you go to New York, people speak very quickly. They have strong accents, spoken language, and they sign much more rapidly. So even within the United States, there are some cultural differences. And of course, we have that heavy overlay of having so many enslaved people in the United States that there's a lot of variation there, but other cultural groups are also getting their due. For example, we have now queer deaf groups. We have older deaf groups. Groups are kind of spreading out and trying to identify what they are individually rather than just one big collective. So, yeah.
the person get a certificate from interpreter course and he or she must have registered themselves in an RID. So there's a difference between what you said in the paying system in Canada and America. So that is between some $50 or some $25. So that is decided by some group, but in India it is not that much. If a person, if interpreter got their certificate, then
Interpreters are deciding themselves that how much they have to be paid. Because I have completed the course, I have. So if you are inviting me for the interpretation, so I have to decide the rates for the price, that how much I have to be charged. So in your perspective, who is deciding? The NGO is working in the association, or the interpreters themselves decide their charges, or who, or RID, the registry interpreters.
Well, deaf people don't decide how much interpreters are paid in the United States. It's usually an agency that hires the interpreter and says, we will pay you this much money. Sometimes the interpreters will say, no, I'll do it for a little more. And the agency might say yes or no. So it's usually agencies, employers, Amazon. I know Amazon's a big presence here. They make the determination of how much interpreters get paid in the United States.
And same in Canada. Our National Association of Interpreters does not talk about pay. Our provincial associations of interpreters might have a recommended suggested pay scale. And that was both created for both interpreters who are new graduates and those who are experienced. The university has its own pay scale, and if you want to work there as an interpreter, you get paid what they want. But you get paid more if you're certified. You get paid more if you have a degree. You get paid more if you're working for the government. And so it really does depend. And I can set my own fee. I can say I charge $100 an hour. If you want me to interpret for that wedding, that's gonna cost you $300. I could do that. Or I could say, hey, you're my deaf friend. I'm gonna interpret for free. It's different.
It is different, and, but just to add to that, in Washington DC, we do a lot of government work. We work for the Secret Service, we work for the FBI, and agencies have to win contracts to get that work. And sometimes they say, we will only charge you this much money. The agency says, we won't charge you more. That's right, the bidding process. You got it. So
Hello.
it's not fixed, but it
Hello.
depends on a lot of factors.
Hello, Hanju.
Mhm.
so that amount is paid by deaf individual or hearing
Government.
or government.
In our case, deaf people very seldom. pay
कल
for
आफ्टरनून
anything.
में कॉल कर लेना
Yeah, very seldom.
मैं
It's the organizations that pay. It's the government who pays, like medical services are paid by the government. Amazon pays for themselves. If you hire a deaf person, who's working as an IT technology computer guy, that organization that hires the deaf person, they pay for the interpreters. My mother used to work for Microsoft for one deaf guy. And that was paid for by Microsoft. No problem.
I want to add one thing to that too. Sometimes, for example, I'll go to a doctor's office. And doctors by law are supposed to pay for the interpreter, by law. But the doctors will say, we don't need an interpreter. Or they'll say, I'm going to add this to your bill, deaf person. I'm going to add this charge for the interpreter to your bill. And sometimes if the deaf person doesn't know the law, they're kind of shocked. So what I will do is we'll go out in the hall and I'll say, you have a legal right to have the doctor paid. I'm not going to go and explain it. You don't have to explain it. Let's tell the agency. And the agency has deaf people who are lawyers who will go to the doctor and say, you are under legal protection. You must pay this bill. So that means the deaf person doesn't have to get in a fight with their doctor. I don't have to get in a fight. We have people who will go and advocate for that law to be enacted. It's frustrating. It's frustrating what doctors and lawyers will do sometimes.
And Brenda, by agency, you need an interpreter referral agency who's hired you for that job. So the agency is kind of your boss for that particular job. So you're going to the boss to say, hey, okay, so that's.
You need to
that's
talk
very
to
nice.
Dr. Smith and tell him what's up. And then the agency representative will go and say, excuse me, you have a legal mandate to provide interpreters and pay for it.
And in Canada, we don't have that issue. Anything medical is covered by funding from the government. And everybody knows it. You would never find a doctor who would say, what? I have to pay for interpreters? They would all know that the government's gonna pay for the interpreters.
Actually, we are running out of time, so I request ISLRTC staff so they can ask their own doubts.
So I have a question. I am teaching to deaf students for the hearing students the relay services regarding the relay interpreting. So while I'm taking the test, what is going on? Like students are listening Hindi voice and then they are translating in ISL because I am deaf and I don't have trust on that whether they are doing the correct or not. Is there any technology in your area that how can I check this point and whether it is going correct or wrong?
Yes, you should have captioning turned on and be watching it when they're interpreting into Hindi or into English, so you can monitor it at the same time and catch them immediately as they're doing it. Or we would suggest that program Go React, GOREACT. It's a wonderful program and you don't have to guess at what they're saying.
Thank you so much. Okay, one more question Neha wants to ask.
So ma'am, your lectures were very inspiring. So I have one question to you. I want to pick up one topic, what you said about voicing, the quality of voicing. So in that course, hearing students, they are aiming for being an interpreter when they enter in that course. So how we test the quality? So are they appropriate for the course or not, or we just do the journal audience to come and join the course for the admission purpose?
So how does a deaf instructor monitor the voice interpretation? Is that the question?
No, question was regarding.
Question is related to admission while the hearing candidates are coming for the taking the admissions. So in initial period, we can give the admission to random anybody, or we have to check their spoken language skill or voicing skill before giving the admissions to them. So how can we do that?
I understand now. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So how do you determine the entry requirements if you're a deaf instructor? Well, you just have a panel of hearing people who can do that for you. Or you ask them to provide a transcript of something that they interpreted and make them give you a transcript of the entry requirement materials. And then you can look and just read the transcript and you tell them they have to put down every hesitation, every word. They can't just make it up. So you can do it, or use captioning as you listen to as you watch them doing their audio performance.
Can have more questions. Abhishek sir, do we have time for more questions? We have 2 minutes. I think Sarah's been raising her hand.
Get your attention that Neha Rajput is asking question in your institute or in your country. How do you give admission to the hearing students on the basis of their sound quality or on the basis of their voiceover quality? How do you admit students in your institute?
In Canada, it would be based on their English or French fluency. So we're not very strict about it, I have to be honest, because usually sign language is the problem. So usually sign language is the problem, but if I was setting up an interpreting program, I would create a test. I would base it on the CEFR, CEFR. And for the spoken language, if their first language is spoken, Hindi or English or French, I would expect them to get the 4th or the 5th level. And I would assess it using the CEFR.
Yeah, and at Gallaudet, we're fortunate because we have a whole group of deaf people that do a test called the Sign Language Proficiency Interview, ISLRTC. And they actually assess the students for us, their sign language, and then give them a rating from 0 to 4. And they can't get into our program unless they have a 3, okay? And to the spoken language, we also we have materials that we send to them and they have to send it in. And then the hearing faculty assess their skills. So we're one of the few programs. I do want to tell you one interesting thing about Gallaudet though, because all of our classes are in sign language in the interpreting program. Many of our students complain that they never get the opportunity to do their other language, the spoken end of the language. They're always working on their sign language. So that's a weakness in the Gallaudet program, is that they're really not working on both languages. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very insightful. My question is very ironic since I am in a certification course. But what are your opinions on how important a certificate or a license is since you are not certified? And being a CODA, sign language has been my first language. And for me to come here and give 2 years of my life and my time means that I'm missing out on assignments, I'm missing out on maybe learning something else. So what is your opinion? And also because I know there is an association called Deaf Parented Interpreter in the US. Uh, we have nothing like that here. So what are your opinions? How important is the certificate? How important is it?
I'll say that, we've had many CODAs go through programs. And they find it very, very helpful on a few fronts. One is they learn about their own language because they've grown up with sign language, but it was never taught to them. So that they really appreciate. They also, there's a tendency to, I don't know if I would use the term find themselves. Because growing up as a CODA is such a unique experience. And sometimes then when they're in program and there's a couple of other CODAs in the program, they learn from each other. I was just out with a friend of mine and she's probably 70 years old. She was 35 years old before she met another CODA. And she never realized how quick that connection was. Oh my gosh, you're just like me. Oh, I've never met anyone like you. So I think the training is important to learn the language, to learn interpreting formally. And then I think CODAs graduate and I think they're very successful in general, and they become leaders in the field. So I think giving up 2 years is well worth it. You will last for 30 more years and you have a strong foundation.
Marty's very positive. I was going to present the other view. Well, that is that I see a lot of CODA students who are very frustrated. They get into classes and they look at their classmates. Oh my gosh, they can't even sign. And then you end up teaching them signs. And you end up telling them about your culture and you become a teacher of sorts, and it's frustrating. So I hear you. I agree with Marty, but I understand your frustration. So I do think that as your programs here develop, there does need to be special attention, like we said, to developing a cohort of CODA interpreters who are already fluent to a certain degree. We know CODAs aren't all the same, right? And some CODAs are weak, and some CODAs say, oh, I'm not good in the spoken language part. And so a lot of work needs to be done, but you're definitely a different breed than these people who are coming in without any sign language. So we would encourage you to work with your programs to develop that kind of cohort.
Hello. Here I would like to add, considering this quotas and quotas, even government and in ISLRTC, we are also preferring and we are in the process. So you can get the direct admission in second year of. It need not to, they need not to go for whole 2 years. And if it is materialized,
I see two CODAs looking at each other and smiling and laughing. Well, yes, right. I mean, you know, the thing is that what I would say to you at ISLRTC is go out and recruit CODAs, actively recruit CODAs, because if you want to fill your sign language interpreter gap quickly, that's who you need to go as a first line. Is just go to their homes say we want to offer a program for you, go directly to them and they'll be ready to go so much quicker. Then keep working with your non-signers, of course, keep working with them. But your quotas are gonna really fill your gap much more quickly if you can go to them directly and offer them something specialized.
Good idea. In your presentation, you have shown something about post-graduation interpreting in healthcare and any other things. Can you tell me something in detail? What is the course you are conducting, which we can also conduct in our conversation?
Well, a specialization in healthcare.
Yeah, some post-graduation diploma or something like that in healthcare or something.
I am a little concerned that students who are in your program, who are still in the learning phase, jump the gun and they try to learn specialized terminology before they even have a strong foundation in ISL. I think that's something you might want to consider as specialized training after the programming is done. Wait till you get a bachelor's program or you have a certificate program after an ISL program, and then start to develop specialties is what I would recommend. It's just too much. It's too much for new students to learn specialized skills like that, you know, or get great placements with experienced interpreters there, bring them in as interns, make a 2-year commitment to stay at that healthcare facility so that they can then acquire those skills on the job. That's what I would recommend.
And there's another model where interpreters have to graduate from a program and then go out and work for a number of years and then come back for a specialization in any field. But to be out there and work in the field, and if they want to specialize in medical, that could be a requirement before they can take the certification program. But there's nothing like experience out there before they take the specialization. It's very hard, like some of us who have gone through a bachelor's, straight to a master's, straight to a PhD. It's like, I know people who have done that, they've never worked a job. And I'm shocked, they're 30 years old, they've never had a job. So in interpreting, graduate, work, come back for the specialization.
I want to discourage you because I think the certificate is magnificent that you guys are starting with that. But 10 years from now, I think you ought to keep pushing towards more and more and more.
So thank you so much. This panel discussion and question answer session has been quite engaging, and I think everybody has enjoyed. It was informative as well. Since it was a live question answer session, it was more engaging, right? Yeah, we felt it was engaging. How did you feel?
You should have done the whole thing, question and answer. You guys are so interesting and you have great questions.
Yeah. So actually we have stressed the time, and due to paucity now we are telling the participants to send their questions virtually, and then we will be forwarding you the questions, and in future also we'll be asking the answer of the questions and your inputs also. Now it's time to recognize your valuable time, effort, and all the contribution. As a token of, we feel immensely grateful to both of you. You have come all the way from the US and Canada, and you thought of us, you thought of ISLRTC family, the deaf community of India. We are so happy and immensely grateful to you. To recognize that as a token of our love and gratitude, I request respected director of ISLRTC, Kumar Raju sir, to offer a memento to Dr. Nicodemus. So, sir, volunteer. Director ISLRTC presenting the Memento as a token of love and gratitude from ISLRTC to Dr. Nicodemus, Professor, Gallaudet University. Thank you so much. Now I request Deputy Director Sanjay Kumar sir to present the memento as a token of love to Dr. Taylor, Martin Taylor. We loved your jokes in between the presentation. Thank you so much, sir. Now I request the resource persons to take the seats there. We will have a national anthem now. So as we conclude this symposium, I now invite Sri Sanjay Kumar, Deputy Director of ISLRTC, to express the formal vote of thanks. Thank you.
Dr. Abhishek. A very pleasant good evening to all. It's my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the entire ISLRTC family. As we conclude this successful international symposium on interpreter education and research, perspective from the United States, Canada, and India. Firstly, a special thanks to our Secretary, Sri Rajesh Agrawal, Sri Rajiv Sarma, Joint Secretary, DEPwD, Ministry of Social Justice, for their motivation, guidance, and support to the mission of empowering the community. Although we could not make it to join this program, but their blessings, their support are always with us. So we thank them for their support all the way. I would like to extend a warm thank you to Professor Das, Rector JNU, for his esteemed presence and address that set the tone for the today's proceedings. I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished resource persons, Dr. Brinda from Gallaudet University, Dr. Taylor from Canada, for sharing their invaluable insights on interpreter education and research. Your contributions have enriched the symposium, and we are truly grateful. I want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Sri Kumar Raju, Director ISLRTC, for his unwavering support, leadership, vision, and continuous guidance in making this event possible. We are grateful to Professor Preeti Das, Chief Coordinator LEC JNU, Dr. Sandesa Raipa, Assistant Professor, for his continuous support. We would like to thank JNU, especially the staff and volunteers, for providing the venue and their full assistance in making the event successful. Our sincere thanks to the representative of National Deaf Association, Interpreter Association, ISL Teachers Association, DEPwD, for their coming and joining us and giving us cooperation and participation and to motivate us. A heartfelt thanks to DC and DTSL students from all CRCs and NIs who joined the symposium virtually, making this symposium a truly collaborative international experience. Finally, I would like to extend my appreciation to the entire team of ISLRTC, the volunteers, the catering staff, and all those behind the scenes for their dedicated efforts in making this event successful. Once again, thank you to everyone for your participation and support. We look forward to future collaborations and further empower the deaf community through education and research. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
So thank you, sir, for extending your heartful thanks to all of us. Thank you so much. Now we will have the national anthem, and after that there will be group photograph of the staff of ISLRTC, followed by the volunteers of ISLRTC who will get the certificate, who have worked in ISL during the ISL day, Sign Language Day on 23rd September. followed by the photograph with the volunteers of the JNU, and then we will disperse for the high tea. So now I request all the participants to kindly stand up at your place in respect of the national anthem. Thank you so much. Please take your seat. Now I request all the staff members of ISLRTC on the stage to take a group photograph. All the staff members of ISLRTC. I request resource person, Dr. Nick